Since the dawn of time, humans have wrestled with what their purpose is on this earth. Is it to achieve peace, pass on your legacy, or maybe even ascend to a higher form of being? The answer to all these questions and more are no. It is in fact much more important than that. It is to debate what entry in a beloved video game series is best. And two men are brave enough to answer the call to this day. Ladies and gentlemen, play witness to this historic event. So, Liam, you know that Far Cry 6 launched this week, yeah?
Yeah, I know, right? It's been a long time coming, and you know what? I've been pretty keen to get my hands on it.
Well, I hate to remind you, but me or you haven't really been fortunate enough to play it.
Oh, yeah, not playing it does absolutely suck, but at least we have something to play over the Christmas break, right?
I suppose.
Do you know what, Aaron? Stick with me here, because what if, right, instead of moping and crying excessively in the shower about our inability to play Far Cry 6, we did something else that was Far Cry related?
What do you think you have in mind? That little chorizo dog isn't gonna pet itself.
Oh, yeah, true, but what if we reminisce about our favourite Far Cry entries instead?
Yeah. No, I like that, but better still, we could make it a competition and keep things interesting.
Yeah, and we could leave it to the Push Square viewers to decide who argued the points for their game the best.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to get their opinions on things.
Yeah, okay, Ace, I love this idea. So I assume you're gonna take Far Cry 3, right?
No. I assume that you would.
Oh, cool, we're gonna get murdered in the comments, aren't we?
Look, if we're going to talk about Far Cry games, especially the best Far Cry games, then there's only one entry I'm going to talk about, and that is the underappreciated Far Cry New Dawn, man. So much fun.
And I, ever the contrarian, will go Far Cry 2.
Great, well with that out of the way, I guess there's now only one thing to say. May the franchise wars commence.
In my mind, when people think of Far Cry, they think of two things. Psychotic villains that torment the player throughout their adventure, and large open-world environments that allow players to express themselves through dynamic play. Although both of these elements arguably weren't solidified as series staples until the release of Far Cry 3, Far Cry 2 still features these beloved ingredients. And yet, Far Cry 2 is a dramatically different experience compared to its successors. Whereas other Far Cry games lean into the action movie themes that made Far Cry 3 a breakout hit, Far Cry 2 is a more grounded affair. You play as a mercenary tasked with killing an arms dealer known as the Jackal, who is operating within a war-torn African state.
The target's presence in the state continues to be a destabilizing influence. He's largely responsible for the recent influx of weapons into the country and clear violation of the Joint Signatory Framework. His reputation as a dangerous arms dealer is well deserved. Orders are to terminate.
The Jackal is a deadly force that is central to the game's narrative, but he is ultimately a more morally ambiguous presence compared to the likes of Vars or Pagan Min. The Jackal is a product of his environment, rather than a straight-cut villain. A figure of brutality who is in a permanent state of conflict with himself as much as with the player. He's a rare instance of nuance in a franchise filled with platitudes. Also, he's arguably not the main antagonist of the game at all. The true villain of Far Cry 2 is kind of the environment itself, but we'll circle round to this. Aaron, it's time to state your case.
Now, I might be conceding victory to you, Liam, almost immediately in this first aspect, because Far Cry in general doesn't rely too much on its narrative, but Far Cry 2, from what I hear, is a lot more mature than later entries. That said, as a direct sequel to Far Cry 5, set 17 years after the nuclear war has changed the structure and shape of Hope County, New Dawn portrays itself well as a Mad Max-style journey where a new world order has been established. In it, you play as a totally new character known simply as the Captain, a personal guard of a civic leader, Thomas Brush,
who has a reputation for rebuilding communities across the state. Unfortunately, for you and for him, your train is quickly run off the rails at the beginning of the game, ambushed by a raging bandit group known only as the Highwaymen. Led by twin sisters Mickey and Lou, as this Far Cry's villainous duo, it's your job to fight back against their chaotic territory by rescuing back Rush from capture and scavenging resources to restore your home base of prosperity. This sets the stage for a relatively standalone open world adventure that mostly gets out of the way of itself to let you have fun, providing just enough stakes to make you care about this community and its people, all while making you feel like a one-man army. Is Far Cry normally all about the villains? Yes, and while Mickey and Lou might not carry the same gravitas of, say, Far Cry 5's Joseph Seed, although he does appear here as part of the endgame, both twins are a believable portrayal of essentially young kids running rampant in the post-apocalypse, which they now view as their own playground. They did grow up in its aftermath after all, so they don't know any better. This makes taking them down as part of the explosive campaign all the sweeter.
The unnamed African state in which Far Cry 2 takes place is far removed from the open-world playgrounds found in subsequent releases. There are no opportunities to pull on a windsuit and go for a bit of a fly, for instance, and the player certainly doesn't find themselves on any drug-induced trips to parallel dimensions filled with magical tigers. That's a thing that happens in Far Cry 4, right? The world of Far Cry 2 is miserable, one filled with struggle and strife. Warring factions vie for power following both government collapse and the exhaustion of the nation's diamond mine, an essential part of the country's economy. You arrive into an inferno of complications. Your survival is dependent on playing sides as much as shooting bullets. It's a location that's actively working against you, attempting to prevent your progress as much as any of the game's actual human enemies. Your guns jam all the time. Your car requires you to pop the hood and repair it after each minor alteration. Wounds can be healed with syringes, but once your supply runs dry, it's time to dig a knife into your own flesh to keep on fighting. The roads are filled with roaming soldiers. It's dusty, it's barren, it's harsh. There are few distractions that tempt you off the critical path, and there is certainly nothing comparable to a Tekken-style minigame featuring roosters. Oh, also you have malaria. You contract it within minutes of beginning the game, and it has to be dealt with constantly, otherwise it kills you. Yeah, the fact you have malaria is cheap and dumb, and people understandably make jokes about it to this day, but there is something to be said about a game that puts you on the back foot straight from the off. Some might think this all sounds unreasonably antagonistic, and they'd be right, but never in the history of Far Cry has an entry achieved such cohesion between narrative, setting, and mechanics as it does here. Far Cry 2 is a tough game to love, but it's a confidently realised one nonetheless.
Yes, the world of New Dawn is heavily based on Far Cry 5's fictional Hope County, but I'm here to say that you'd struggle to ever know it. Coated in gorgeous green, pink, and yellow hues, this isn't your grandma's apocalypse. Instead, it serves as the perfect location in which to wreak havoc while still basking in all of its raw beauty. Hope County in Far Cry 5 was comprehensive, I'll admit, but also incredibly pedestrian. Oh look, it's yet another barn. This version of it in New Dawn, however, is full of surprises. Whether it's discovering an untouched culture of survivors in the mysterious New Eden's Gate found in the upper part of the map, or gunning it up within the meat grinder racetrack in search of loot. New Dawn's map is packed with detailed locations that somehow manages to harmonise man-made destruction and natural surroundings rather beautifully. The Earth is slowly taking this world back. One of my main issues with a lot of Far Cry titles is that they can feel overstuffed with monotonous, repetitive tasks, sometimes to the point of exhaustion. This is where New Dawn, being a trimmed, standalone sequel, comes in handy though, as it cuts most of the fat you'd see in other full Far Cry games and instead focuses on the good stuff. Leveling up, for example, is done by completing challenges you'll fulfill naturally in the world, meaning rarely will you have to grind to unlock a particular perk. Seamless drop-in and drop-out co-op is also here to make liberating outposts in search of ethanol with a friend immensely exciting and unpredictably creative. But exploring New Dawn solo is also great thanks to the guns for hire system which it borrows from Far Cry 5. Who doesn't want to pal up with a pensioner with a sniper, reverend with a shotgun, or, I don't know, a good doggo with a knack for sniffing out enemies? It's just another way Ubisoft rendered New Dawn's map as teeming with life and personality, meaning it's always a joy to roam.
Honestly, Aaron, you're going to win this section, and I'm not even going to try and defend myself here. The weapons in Far Cry 2 are absolutely fine. Pistols, shotguns, machine guns, sniper rifles, they all feel weightless and admittedly a bit naff. It's fair to say that the more Far Cry leaned into absurdity with its later entries, the stronger its combat became. However, one thing I will say in defense of Far Cry 2 is that it featured a mechanic so gimmicky, so revolutionary, that it still feels impressive to this day. Equipped pretty much immediately with a flamethrower, players are able to start fires that burn through the undergrowth realistically. Fire crackles and licks against trees and bushes, slowly spreading until only charred stumps and ash remain. I mean, yeah, okay, from a visual standpoint, this all looks a bit quaint in 2021, but in 2008 this felt like an extraordinary leap forward from a technical perspective. The fire tech did find its way into Far Cry 3, but by that point the gimmick had already gone the way of Bad Company's destructible environments. As these games became more visually stunning, this probably wasn't worth the hassle, I guess.
Now, no disrespect to you, Liam, but in Far Cry New Dawn we're dealing with much more than humble flamethrowers. And what's especially great about the weapons here is that they're based on a tiered system ranging from simple grey all the way up to gold, with the gamut of guns getting more experimental in line with the apocalyptic tone just as you go on. Because while Far Cry 6 might indeed have the CD firing Macarena gun, New Dawn's signature weapon of choice is the aptly named Soul Launcher. This blade-based beauty can be loaded up and slung to take out between 2 and 3 enemies at once, all whilst doing so silently. And when fully upgraded, it can fire multiple souls while containing an electrical charge. Shocking. The Soul Launcher is indicative of Far Cry's inherent wackiness, yes, but while such creativity often feels out of place in other entries, New Dawn makes it work due to the context of its blossom-filled setting. It's why silent pistols using carrier bags and elastic bands to tighten the barrel makes sense, and why a shovel with a smiley face on it is your best chance in a melee duel. This makeshift attitude gives New Dawn's weapons a character all their own that you'd struggle to find elsewhere. Plus, New Dawn also lets you craft Rex Power Colt's M9 pistol from Blood Dragon. Need I say more? Well, there you have it, Liam. I think we both did a good job there explaining why we love our particular Far Cry game.
Yeah, me too, even if I did have to explain the positives of contracting malaria as a gameplay mechanic.
Hey, I had to do something similar, to be fair, outlining the perks of hunting for gasoline within the Super Bloom post-apocalypse. I'm sure folks will understand.
Well, yeah, but who made the best case for their favourite Far Cry game? The decision is in your hands.
Yep, New Dawn or Far Cry 2. We've just started a poll on our YouTube community tab, so feel free to hop on over there and cast your vote in terms of which of the games me and Liam have just discussed is indeed the best Far Cry game. We'll be sure to reveal the winner in, hopefully, the next Franchise Wars YouTube video. And that just about does it for the very first edition of Franchise Wars on Push Square. Which game series would you like me and Liam to tackle next? Be sure to let us know in the comments section below. And then, once you've done that, leave a like if you enjoyed this video and consider subscribing to the Push Square YouTube channel for everything else PlayStation related. Until next time, me and Liam will both see you in the next one.